Thank you for being here tonight, and for anybody who's watching this recording. Appreciate it. My name is Rachel. I work with Strive to Learn, and I am one of the college counselors on our team. I'm happy to be here to be sharing with you about the University of California application and what they call their personal insight questions. They don't have a big essay or personal statement. Instead, it's the PIQs that are important to them. This part of the UC application is actually the thing these days that's really going to set candidates apart from each other. There are 8 different options of questions, and students will choose 4 to write from. There is a link here on what those 8 questions are. Every one requires a maximum 350 word answer. They suggest that you write a response that's between 250 and 350 words. So you really don't want to go under that 250 mark. You really want to show that you're being reflective, showing who you are, and giving new information to the admissions committees. Like I just mentioned, so the goal is for students and applicants to really be able to share more about who you are, give them some new information about you, or clarify details about other things that you've also mentioned and reported in your application, which could include your activities section. So if there's anything in there you want to expand on, this is your opportunity to do it. Each question is equal to the next. They don't give any higher value to one or the other. And there's not an advantage to answering one over another. The other thing that's really interesting that the University of California system wants to stress is that these answers are not essays. They're asking you questions, and you aren't required to respond as you might be with a personal statement. They really just want straightforward answers, and I'll get into that more in a little bit. So how do you choose which PIQs you want to respond to? This is your opportunity to really show who you are, to really kind of make yourself come alive and off the page, and take shape as a person. When these applicants when admissions committees are looking at applications, you might have exactly the same GPA as the next student they're looking at. So really, what's going to be the difference between you and that other student with all the same numbers that are being reported? It's the PIQs that are going to set you apart. So so you'll choose the 4 things that you relate to the most, that stand out to you, that you feel good about sharing. Maybe there's something on your activities list that you want to expand on, or tell a story about. It's an opportunity to share some new information about yourself. Again, your chance to make yourself stand out as an applicant. The admissions committees want to learn about you as a person from your perspective and in your own words, which means don't quote anybody else. Don't put song lyrics in there. Just write straightforward in your own voice, talking about yourself. So how do I write my responses? What they say is that you should think about these as almost an interview on paper. If you were sitting across the table from somebody and they said to you, tell me about your creative side. What are the things that you enjoy doing that bring out your creativity? What does that mean to you? So that is actually one of the questions, is talking about creativity. So that's up to you, and to define what creativity means to you and in your life. It doesn't have to mean art per se. I have a student right now that's talking about how surfing actually taps into his creativity and his creative side. It's definitely open to definition. And with each question, and I'll show you the questions later, but they will give you a few more things to think about and extra questions to rely on. So the goal is not to write what you think people might want to hear. If you're working with a high school guidance counselor or a college counselor like one of us, or if you hand this to your English teacher, this is not about what they want to hear or what you think an admissions committee would want to hear. It's really, they just want to know more about you. So again, don't quote Don't use any hooks, nothing fancy. It's not an essay. You don't have to be flowery with your language. You really just have to be straightforward. They aren't even really looking for structure. It's not important. So when I was in a information session about this, they said, we're not English teachers and we're not looking for mistakes and various structures like somebody might be looking at for a personal statement. Of course, make sure that your grammar is good. Make sure that you do not have spelling errors and that it actually reads and makes sense. But it's okay if you're just giving an answer that's pretty straightforward and not necessarily creative. So think about also what topics you might be comfortable sharing with a stranger. You don't know who these people are, and they don't have any bias. They really just, again, want to know who you are. So as I was saying before, focus on content and not style. So that's part of we're not English teachers. We're not looking for creativity. They just want to know, give us some good stuff to hang on to and some things that will allow us to see who you are as a person. So speak from the I perspective and be persuasive in your writing. So we were actually at a conference with the University of California system earlier this fall. And I thought that this was an important thing to share. Something that they said specifically is that admissions readers are required to complete bias training every year. This means that a student can feel confident in sharing any topic with us: gender identity, substance abuse, learning disabilities, and more. We value the experience and what the student gained from the situation. We do not penalize a student for circumstances they've lived through. Sharing their voice means that students talk to us in a plain and direct manner. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but basically they're saying, tell us who you are and don't hold back. So that is important. So use the 6 W's to guide you: your who, what, where, when, why, and how. And remember that reflection is key. So, they're going to say, okay, this person was writing about, leadership on their soccer team. And so they're the captain of the team. Okay. So we learned about when that happened. We learned about the circumstance where, why they took on that role. And really the most important thing then that's going to come from that is telling them the information and then actually being able to reflect on it and say, and here's what I learned from this experience. This is what I learned about being a leader. These were some of the experiences that I had, and now how they've shaped my view of what it means to be a leader and how I want to move that into the future. Maybe it was a negative experience. Maybe it was positive. So really just be prepared to kind of go deep into those experiences and share as much reflection as you can. I know it's really tempting to look online for examples and templates. I think sometimes there's a point in which this can be helpful, but only to a certain point. Don't get bogged down by reading what other people have written, because you're just going to start to play the comparison game and say, well, this person did this and this person did this, and I feel like I need to, show more or say more, and I don't have that. And, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people, but you are a unique person and you have your own story to share, and you should be sharing that story in your own voice. So that's really kind of the most important part of this, I think. 350 words is not a lot of space. That is like a few solid paragraphs. If you're writing, let's say 3 paragraphs and each is 100 words, that's your answer right there. So what we say is that it's not a lot of real estate. So make sure that you're only really sharing things that are important and relevant and, again, are showing who you are. And do not definitely draft your responses outside of the application. I think that's like a given really for any kind of writing that you're doing for any of your college applications. Don't draft it within the application. That just calls for, not being able to edit it properly, and potentially making mistakes and not being able to save it. And suddenly you've written all this stuff and then you lose it by accident. So definitely use Google Docs if you're going to share it with someone, or just a Word document. Even if you want to put pen to paper, just make sure that you're doing it outside of the actual application and copy them into the app when you're ready to submit. Okay, so what does a good response look like? So I kind of mentioned this earlier, just in terms of the being captain of the soccer team. So this is a question about leadership, which is one of the options. So a student shouldn't simply say, okay, I was captain of the soccer team. That's going to be in their awards and their activities and awards section anyway, under clubs and organizations. So, this is also kind of where that flowery, language comes in. They don't need to know anything about how the grass was beautiful and green or how shiny the soccer ball was. That's just extra words. Talk to them about what are the relevant facts, give them new information, and it's all about context for this accomplishment. So how did you become captain? What skills did you exhibit and learn in this role? And why was that important to you? So take all the details and the information and put them into a clear, concise response. You might be surprised at how short 350 words actually is. So let's workshop a couple of examples here. Now, both of the examples I'm going to show you are probably under 200 words, just for the sake of time. And what we have here. If I was the counselor, I would absolutely be pushing both of these students to expand on these and write a little bit more, at least probably get to 275 or 300 words. I tend to find that when I'm working with students, we're actually working to cut down from over 350 words, and that's okay. So the question that this one is responding to is, tell us about an academic subject that inspires you. And it goes on to say, an academic subject that inspires you and how you have pursued this, how this has affected you both inside and outside the classroom. Okay, so this one says, as a young ballerina, I used to observe the older dancers' feet and wonder how their entire body weight could be supported by the tips of their toes. I was unknowingly memorizing the anatomy that allowed me to perform on stage. My interest in the human body started with dance and continued in high school with courses like human anatomy. I was able to build upon the knowledge I had in dance class after years of ballet to support my classroom assignments. I began to understand the different muscles, bones, and organs that compose the body, and also how their structure defines their functions. The more I learned about the body, the more questions I craved to have answered. Like point shoes supporting the dance, what other creations or technology can we combine to enhance a body, a dancer's performance? Biology allows me to make sense of the inner workings of my body on stage and off stage. It fuels my determination to expand my understanding of dance. So this, I think, is a very kind of sophisticated answer. I think that what this person is doing is tying together a couple of different interests. I'm sure the admissions committee already knew that she or he was into dancing and a ballerina from their activity section. But here's the so what. So what does that have to do with an academic subject? So the student was able to tie that to biology and talk about how, it was ballet that got them interested in human anatomy and biology and the workings of the human body. So that's a great answer. Again, I would want it to be a little bit longer, but I do think that it is a great example of kind of what this committee is looking for, these committees. the people who I have online, do you have any questions or thoughts about this specific example? Okay. If you change your mind, you can just chat and let me know. Um, so this is kind of, these are a couple examples of what an admissions officer will ask themselves when they're reading these PIQs. So how does the student answer the question? Do they share a clear point or two of new information? Like, can we look through their application and then say, oh, we didn't really know that they were interested in biology, so that's great. And is this an insight into the student's major or career path? Now, I will argue that not every answer needs to provide insight to a major or a career path, especially because there are so many students right now and always really who are going to college and they don't know what they want to major in. And so they're applying undeclared and undecided, and they're on a journey to figure out what that actually is and looks like. And that is 100% acceptable. So I think that, when an essay or an answer can kind of provide a little bit more clarity, if you have a chosen career path or a major, then, then that's helpful. But I would say that that is not a requirement for what these answers and various college essays have to be about. You may find that a couple applications might be specifically asking you about a major. That is, if you're choosing one, it is most likely that if you're going to apply undecided or undeclared, you're not going to get any questions about a specific major or a course of study. That is just a side note. So here's another example of how have you helped your community or made it a better place, is something along those lines. So here again is another example. This is an early edit of one of my students. And this has changed quite a bit. But not quite a bit. She has made some changes to it since, but this is also just in the middle of us editing together, probably about a month ago. This is where it was. So it says, to make my community a better place, I volunteer at my local soup kitchen. Homelessness is one of the most significant issues in my community and something I care deeply about. From the grocery store to the park, I saw homeless people everywhere in my community growing up and always wanted to do something to help. Each time I volunteer at the soup kitchen, not only do I get to help provide over 300 people with meals, but I get the opportunity to brighten their day. I always offer everyone dessert to make sure the children I serve leave happier. Nothing beats watching little girls' faces light up when I hand them chocolate cake covered in pink frosting and being able to communicate with people who would normally endure language barriers while seeking their only meals. I get to help the Spanish speakers that come to the soup kitchen communicate their needs easier by being able to serve them in Spanish rather than have them struggle in English. Experiences like these teach me the importance of volunteering and donations. Seeing firsthand that donations are essential to supplying families with their weekly groceries motivated me to organize food drives at my school. Through my participation in campus ministry, I encourage my classmates to donate non-perishable foods to our food drives, held at school at least 3 times a year. Wherever I decide to attend college, I plan to get involved in student clubs that revolve around volunteering and giving back to the community. So Grace or Lucero, if you have any thoughts about this, I'd love to hear them from you. Whoops, sorry. So like I said, we have definitely edited this and honed it in a little bit more. You would love to hear from the student how they are able to communicate in Spanish. Say more about that. Why does she speak Spanish? Oh, is this something they speak natively? Perhaps they study it in school, and so they can tie that in. Well, that is a great actual segue because Spanish is actually the language that they speak in her home and with her family. And so she is basically a native Spanish speaker. She did grow up speaking both English and Spanish. And she actually did choose to do the essay about an academic subject that inspires her. And she talked about Spanish. So it brings up a good point. Thank you for saying that, that you don't really want to be repetitive in these essays. If the point is to learn new information about the candidate, then in context, the committees that are going to be reading her essays, or I'm sorry, they're not essays. The committees that are going to be reading the answers to the PIQs of her application are also going to see that what her background is with Spanish and the role that plays in her life. So just in terms of context, having an essay like this, you're right. If it was completely on its own, then I probably would also have her elaborate more about Spanish. But because she does that in a fully other answer, talking almost 350 words about the Spanish language and how she enhanced her knowledge at school and became more confident with Spanish speaking, I actually told her not to go into more detail about that, because then it's getting repetitive. And they don't want it to be redundant. So this should all be new information in your answers. Does that help? Oops. Anything else that either of you see in here that you would want to see different, that you think is good, stands out to you? I mean, I think she's answering the question pretty well. And like I said, we definitely have honed it in a little bit since then, since I put it into this document. Okay. I thought it was important for her to talk about, kind of the impact that this has had on her, and, to kind of go into a little bit more of the organizing food drives at her school. And so she did do that a little bit and talked about her involvement in that. And then to be a little bit more forward thinking too. So just to say, wherever I go to college, this is something that I want to continue because it's been important to me. So, okay, so those are the two examples. Here are also a couple of resources and worksheets that are available. And before we actually jump into that, I was going to show you all once you're in this application process, this will be pretty easy to find in terms of your application. But as I said, they also add some things to consider. So kind of expanding on those questions a little bit more. So describe an example of your leadership experience in which you've positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. On the actual application, I don't think they actually show you these other questions and things to consider. This is really just to kind of, spark some ideas for you as you're going about your writing off the application. Number 2 is every person has a creative side, and it can be expressed in many ways: problem solving, original and innovative thinking, and artistically, to name a few. Describe how you express your creative side. So that is very much open to interpretation in terms of creativity. What would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? Describe how you have taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. Describe the most significant challenge you faced and the steps you've taken to overcome this challenge. How has this challenge affected your academic achievement? So here they're talking about, it doesn't have to be an academic challenge. That would probably be more for question number 4. But they do want you to touch on how this has affected you academically. So it could be a personal challenge that you faced, and really just talking about what you learned from these, reflecting on them again, is going to be really, really key. Think about an academic subject that inspires you to describe how you furthered this interest inside and or outside of the classroom. What have you done to make your school or community a better place? And then we get a nice general one too. Beyond what has already been shared in your application, what do you believe makes you stand out as a strong candidate for admissions to the University of California? So that would be a place to kind of think. Actually, every student I'm working with has chosen number 8 because there's something they feel that they wanted to write about that didn't really fit into the first 7. And so this is a great opportunity to offer a lot of great resources that are free for everybody. And we have a great podcast that comes out weekly. We have a newsletter and of course, social media accounts. So please follow us, visit our blog, which is also filled with great information about college admissions. And we have a YouTube channel as well. So this is our feedback survey. If you were attending a bunch of different sessions tonight, or even just one, we'd really, really appreciate your feedback. And it will only help us to make all of these better in the future, and to be able to provide more resources for the community. So thank you so much.